Did the Cleveland Cavaliers dodge a bullet with Orlando clinching the 7th seed? And who are the most likely Cavaliers members to take home regular season awards? Spence and I will break it down for you coming up next on Courtside with the Cavs on SI. That's right. Welcome on into another episode of Courtside with the Cavs on SI. The Cavaliers have a nice long week to get themselves ready for their first match of the NBA playoffs, which we'll find out officially on Friday night. We do know one team they will not be playing, which we will talk about coming up here a little bit in the show. But Spence, happy to connect with you today, man. It feels like I don't know, man. It feels like it's been like a slow week just because you don't have Cavs basketball to talk about here for a couple of days. We got a couple more days to wait as well. But obviously an exciting time of year as we kind of wait for the playoffs to take shape. And listen, that Warriors-Grizzlies game on Tuesday night was brilliant. The officiating stunk, but the game itself was a lot of fun.
Most definitely. I had a really good time watching that. Just seeing the crowds come to life. Obviously playing Jimmy Butler, doing his thing with the 38. Steph doing his thing at the end of the game. I kept on screaming at the television every time Zach Edey touched the ball. It was very much so frustrating watching as a fan, knowing how good and talented that he can be, but obviously still a rookie and figuring his way out. And then you had the Orlando and Atlanta game, which there was competition in it, but you could just kind of tell from the onset that the Magic knew that they were better and they had more physicality, they had more poise, and it didn't even come from their best player, so to speak. It didn't come from Paolo Banchero going off or Franz Wagner going off. It was Cole Anthony who was doing the damage, and that was really fun to watch. You saw Wendell Carter Jr. have one of his best games as a pro, in my opinion. So a lot of good things to talk about from those two games. I know that we're not going to get too in-depth from that, but it does have to do with what the Cavs will see next because, like you said, the Magic, they're set to go against the Boston Celtics in what should be a very fun first-round series. Even if Orlando can't keep up in the scoring department, they are going to put Boston in a world of hurt for sure as a very good opponent for them who, let's face it, the last couple of years, they had the Cavs last year and now they have Boston in the first round this year, are always kind of that irritant that just kind of get under your skin and, get to the foul line and really make it a drag out type of game. So looking forward to that, but looking forward even more to getting back into the practice facility with Cleveland and seeing what's going on there with Kenny Atkinson and crew.
Well, since we're already here, we might as well start here with the Orlando Magic piece of this because with Orlando obviously winning that game, as you mentioned, Spence, they clinched the 7th seed. They're squared off to face the Celtics. And we had talked a little bit about just, not that we're worried about anybody that the Cavs would have faced in the first round coming into the week. I think we all felt pretty comfortable about saying the Cavaliers would win against any of these teams that they could potentially be playing. And I think that still is the case with Orlando out of the picture. But you and I both sort of agreed, Spence, that of all the teams they can play, Orlando felt like it was going to be maybe the toughest. And not that, again, they would like push to a game 7 the same way they did last year or anything, but just because the style of play that they have to play with. They have no Jalen Suggs. Obviously, there's no Mo Wagner that's healthy right now. And so they've sort of had to figure out how to play a different style of basketball that didn't involve as much offense. And, that led them to being one of the best defensive teams in the NBA. It's led them to being one of the more rugged and physical teams in the NBA. And so from a first-round standpoint, I do think on some level, the Cavaliers dodged a little bit of a bullet here because the most important thing for Cleveland is whoever you play in the first round, you want it to be a series that you can, A, win pretty quickly so you can kind of get to the next round healthy, but also that you don't want to be against a team that's really going to muck things up and make you have to really earn it. All these teams are going to make you earn it. It's the playoffs. But I'm saying from a standpoint of you don't want it to become like a really physical game that wears you down. When you have aspirations of marching, 4 different rounds to the playoffs and actually chasing an NBA Finals, you want to keep everybody as healthy as possible.
You do. And that's the point of the playoffs, is to make sure you have your best players available, and that the depth that got you through the regular season is going to keep you going throughout the postseason. I think that it's really important that those guys are the freshest they've been. And I feel like this week off, and not really off, but being in the practice facility, being able to get some sets down, getting into the playoff kind of tendencies, and also that conditioning is really going to help. And that's what's so good about securing a number 1 seed, because they are the ones that ran the East this year, and they're the ones that have the Eastern Conference home court now. And that's the best part of all of this, being the top dog, because that's why the regular season matters. And now that I know that's going to all go away, but you've put yourself in a position to where you're hosting now, and you're the ones that control your own destiny.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. And, I also think too, you bring up the health thing. That's been one of the biggest problems for Cleveland the last couple of years, right? Has been the fact that they haven't quite been able to stay healthy this time of year, or they've entered the playoffs and guys have kind of been banged up. So the shorter series you're able to play in the first and even the second round, the better for Cleveland, and the less physical teams you have to play, the better for Cleveland. And so now we kind of get it sets the stage for the Celtics are going to have to deal with that very physical Orlando team. You're going to have to play one of the 3 teams remaining in this field, the Bulls and Heat, who play tonight. Winner of that game then plays the Hawks to see, who will actually have the right to play the Cavaliers after Friday night. We'll have a full understanding of that. And the Cavs will play their first game on Sunday at home. It's a 7:00 tip. We found out obviously in the last couple of days. So, but yes, Spence, I do think, and we talked about this a little bit in our post-game conversation the other day, I do think all these teams presented different challenges to Cleveland for different reasons. I think Orlando probably was the most challenging because of that irritant factor that you brought up. But the Heat are the Heat, right? They always make me a little bit nervous. I'm very big on being worried about the Heat. Every time we play the Heat, I'm sitting here talking about it. But also the Hawks with their length, they can sort of cause some problems. And Chicago, of those 3 teams, probably has the best offense. So if you're worried about a team that can maybe score with Cleveland, that's them. Now, again, we're not necessarily worried about any of these teams, but certainly going to set the stage for a fun first-round series one way or another. And there are still some challenges that each of these teams will present.
Yeah, and that's what's so great about the NBA and the different styles of the teams. You mentioned Miami. They're going to be the ones that slow it down. You have the 2-3 zone. Tyler Hero is playing a really good brand of basketball. Khalil Ware has really come out into his own. And then also Andrew Wiggins being a part of this. Kyle Anderson being a part of this. It's a new look Miami type of team. And I'm not going to lie, I don't know too much about how they've really fit in, except for just kind of following along in social media. So I'm really curious to see how that goes. We know that the head of the snake of that team is definitely Bam Adebayo. But we'll see if they even get to that point, because they do have a matchup with Chicago, who's up and coming. Josh Giddey, Kobe White, really the guys that are the straw that stirs the drink for that team offensively and really get things going in transition. Matas Buzelis, I think, a really, really underrated player on that squad who's a rookie that's really come into his own. Nikola Vucevic, we know that he's seen plenty of postseason action. So that should be a very fun game tonight. Atlanta, not going to lie, after what I saw against Orlando last night, I don't know where they're at mentally. And that kind of gives me a little bit of pause. That also makes me think that they'd be the most advantageous 8th seed to face the Cavs, because they kind of don't know their identity right now. And I think that inconsistency also kind of breeds a little bit of unsureness. That is really hard to overcome, especially the way that Trae Young went out last night. I don't want to say he quit on his team. I think that's a little bit far-fetched. I think he's more frustrated at the officiating. But in that situation, to do what he did after nutmegging a guy and hitting a floater, and the chest pass to the ref, I don't think should have been a technical. I'll side with him on that. But the after part of that, where he was taking the ball and going in between the legs,
he was literally
playing
taking his ball and going home. He was literally taking his ball and going home. That's what he was doing.
And in WrestleMania season, we can talk about that, taking his ball and going home. But seriously, that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And you also look at just kind of the lack of size that Atlanta has now, because the Cavs took away DeAndre Hunter. They don't have Jalen Johnson anymore because he's got injury. Clint Capella has been sidelined with an injury here for a bit too. So they had problems rebounding the basketball, and they had a lot of problems containing the basketball on drives, which we did not see from Atlanta earlier in the year. And I think that the Cavs could take advantage of that because they have a lot of guys who can break guys down off the dribble.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And I actually had the same exact thought as you, Spence, on Atlanta. The way Trae Young got ejected, left that game, and how that kind of played out, just the effort they seemed to show that night. They looked like they just didn't want to be there. And so that makes me wonder if they'd even get past whoever's going to win the game tonight. But if they do, I feel like they're at a place right now where that's probably the team I'd want to play the most, even despite the fact that they've given you some troubles in terms of the wing players. Also, a fun little reunion with Karis LeVert and George Niang if you get that matchup as well, which would be fun to be a part of here in the first round of the playoffs. So we'll see if it actually comes to fruition.
Villain G-Wagon. Villain G-Wagon and Vert coming back for some revenge. I would love to see it. And Larry Nance Jr. down there on the bench too, clapping along.
That's right. That would be a lot of fun to see. So I honestly, after this conversation, I think I'm rooting for that now. I think I want the Hawks because I think it becomes the easiest opponent for the Cavs, and I think it would make for probably the most fun first round storyline, which would be those guys coming back after the trade deadline and playing against Cleveland. So sign me up for that matchup. I think that's what I want now. Maybe you guys feel the same or differently. So we know the Cavaliers players are up for a number of off-season awards this year. And so I wanted to sort of talk about just of the guys who are up for awards, like who you think has the best shot to actually take home some hardware here. So we know Donovan Mitchell's in the MVP conversation. He'll obviously be in the conversation for All-NBA as well. That's probably an honor he's likely to get in some capacity. Clutch Player of the Year, Darius Garland is up for that. We've been talking about that all year. The obvious one that everybody has been harping on the last couple weeks, Evan Mobley in the mix for Defensive Player of the Year. You have DeAndre Hunter up for Sixth Man of the Year, along with Ty Jerome, who's also up for Most Improved Player. And then Coach of the Year, of course, you have Kenny Atkinson in the mix for that. I do see the comment here about DeAndre Hunter not being qualifying for Sixth Man of the Year award due to only playing 64 games. We talked about this at length. The second to last home game in the media room, you actually don't have to be playing 64 games to be qualify for Sixth Man of the Year. We looked this up. We were talking about it. So both him and Ty Jerome are actually in the conversation for it. Now, of those two, I think Ty Jerome probably has a better chance of winning it than DeAndre Hunter. But as you think through these awards in general, Spin, we spent a whole show pretty much boasting about how Evan Mobley deserves more love for Defensive Player of the Year and that it shouldn't just be impacted by Draymond Green deciding he's going to go on a podcast and talk about it. It should be based on merit. And we sort of laid out a lot of the numbers on why. But it does seem like that's one of the more difficult ones to choose for a lot of the people who actually get to vote on these awards. So who do you think actually has the best chance to bring home one of these regular season awards in your perspective?
I think that Evan Mobley's got a great case for it, to be honest with you. I think Evan's got a great case. I think that Darius Garland's got a great case. Kenny Atkinson's got an awesome case. I mean, look, you go down the list, man. This was a team that won 64 games in the regular season. They were the number one seed for a reason. So they're going to be up for these awards. I really would love to see Ty Jerome win that Sixth Man of the Year just because of what he was able to do. Unfortunately, he does not have the ability to win Most Improved Player because of the minutes. That was another thing that we looked at in that CBA, thanks to Ashley Bastock and Jimmy Watkins and all those guys that were able to kind of do that research while we were in the media room. It was really cool to kind of unfold and see how the collective bargaining agreement went with these awards and a lot of the stuff that we disagree with, quite frankly. But I think that moves to Most Improved would make the most sense for Ty Jerome, but unfortunately he does not qualify for that. But DeAndre and Ty, obviously, up for the Sixth Man. Evan for DPOY. Clutch Player of the Year, Darius Garland, especially if you just look at the track record throughout the entire season. Kenny, Coach of the Year. And then Donovan, I know he's probably not going to win it just because it wasn't his best statistical year, but Donovan's going to be in the MVP conversation based on the argument of best player on the best team, just like it always goes with the first seed in each conference.
Yeah, no doubt about it. If I'm sort of deciding between these guys, and listen, we again, you can go back and listen to I think it was our last episode, Spin, on why Evan Mobley deserves Defensive Player of the Year. We waxed poetic about it. We did I think it was kind of a homework assignment, if you will, from Donovan Mitchell to make sure we hype up Evan Mobley's case for Defensive Player of the Year. So we made sure to do that and make him happy as the media members that we are. But I actually think, like, if I'm looking through all these, I think the one that has the best chance of actually hitting, or the person who has the best chance of actually winning, is probably Kenny Atkinson for Coach of the Year. Like, that one feels like the most, like, if we're talking about which one's like in the bag the most, Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, I even saw Chris Fedor of Cleveland.com tweeting about how when he submitted his vote for Defensive Player of the Year, and it was tough, even though I'm assuming he voted for Evan Mobley. We don't know, but like, because he's seen him so up close and personal throughout the season. But if I understand where he's coming from, where he says, hey, listen, this was really tight. Like, there's a lot of cases to be made for a number of different people. And one of the things he brought up was the fact that it was Wemby's award to lose up until the injury situation with him, where he was out for the season. And so that opened the door for some other guys. And once you lose like the lead candidate, it's sort of, you can punch holes in like all the other guys as to like why they maybe don't deserve it or why somebody else does deserve it. So I do think like the field is a little bit more loaded there in terms of guys that you could choose if you wanted to. But with Coach of the Year, like, I don't know how Kenny Atkinson loses this award. I understand there's probably some other coaches out there that have a pretty solid case. I get it. But to be a first-year head coach and get the results that he got with the Cavaliers, starting the season 15-0, and, basically having the lead in the Eastern Conference since October 30th, solely to yourself, and then, blazing through much of the schedule the way they did, winning 64 games, second most in franchise history. How does anybody have a better case than Kenny Atkinson for Coach of the Year, Spence?
I think that JB Bickerstaff has a damn good case because he drove the Pistons out of the mud, and they are a 6th seed. They're not even a play-in team. They're a 6th seed after having one of the worst records in the NBA. Not just last year, but the year before that, and the year before that, and the year before that. So I feel like he definitely deserves consideration as well. This is where it's not fun to be a voter, and I'm glad that I'm not a voter right now because that is a lot of pressure to be put on, and it goes public. So if it was up to me, it would be between Kenny and JB. I mean, the Cavs were really good, and Kenny took them from good to great, and I think that's what we're going to see in the playoffs. But this is a regular season award. I think that's what a lot of people forget, too, about award season. These are what happened in the 82 games prior to the postseason. That's why it's laughable that they celebrate this stuff after the fact. And that this is what happens, and someone's won an award, but they're not performing in the postseason or something like that. And then you get in a whole argument online, and then it goes all off the rails. But I feel like Kenny and JB, that's a really close one to call. And I don't know. It's a really tough one for me. Ton of credit to Kenny, though, because he's really leaned into the depth of the squad, and that's why they got to where they got to, and that's why a lot of the guys earned their spots. Ty Jerome included. Remember, Ty Jerome, he probably was going to be on the outside looking in, according to Kenny, until that September camp, and then it's like, all right, you're a backup point guard, and then you know where it went from there. So that's just one thing to look at with Kenny. I mean, another thing, too, is just like changing up the rotations a bit. DG's more with JA now instead of with Evan like he had been in the past. And now Donovan's going to get a relationship with Evan Mobley, which has now resulted in Evan becoming one of the best players in the NBA. So those are kind of the things I look at when it comes to his Coach of the Year case. JB, again, simple. Drug the Pistons from the basement to the top floor.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is really admirable, too. So how ironic is it, by the way, that we're talking about this on April 16th, 2025, almost a year removed from when J.B. Bickerstaff was dismissed, and we're talking about those two being in the lead for Coach of the Year.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, it is kind of ironic how it worked out that way. I do think they have the two best cases, both in the Eastern Conference, obviously, as well. And it kind of feels like it's going to ultimately just come down to, I guess, which way the voters want to lean. Do you want to take the coach who took a team from the depths and brought them to the playoffs, or do you want to take the team that was good last year and now is great because of that? So I don't know. I would probably, if I was a voter, I would lean Kenny Atkinson. And I know what people are going to say. You're biased. You cover the Cavs, all these different things. Fine. But I just think it's because of the level that the Cavaliers rose to. They were a good team last year, but to see them get to 64 games and for them to be the most efficient offensive team in the NBA and like take those massive strides on the offensive end. And the other thing you got to think about too is like individual performances, right? Like he talked so much when he was hired about taking this certain players to the next level. His ability to get Evan Mobley to kind of break out and take that next step and add to his offensive game and take that next leap in his progression. Like that stuff all matters too. And Kenny's a big part of that. So yeah, I would lean Kenny, but obviously JB I think is the closest person to potentially challenge him. I think Ty Jerome makes a ton of sense for sixth man of the year. Or sorry, did we say he can't?
No, you're right. You're right.
Okay.
Ty qualifies for sixth man. It's not most improved. He can't.
Yeah, he can't win most improved. I think he makes a ton of sense for sixth man. And I think like his case certainly speaks for itself. Like the spark that he was off this Cavaliers bench is going to be something that's notable. But that's a tough field as well, I think, to navigate because there's always so many good players around the league who obviously step up in certain moments and are those same sort of sparks that Ty Jerome was for their team. And so I think he's just got a tougher field to sort of navigate, even though I think Ty Jerome is worthy of the honor.
Yeah. DeAndre Hunter, one of his teammates, is one guy they has to beat out. He also has to beat out Peyton Pritchard. Everyone looks at Peyton Pritchard on the Celtics and what he's able to do for them off the bench.
Yeah.
I was to say, like, definitely got better over the second half of the season after kind of a little iffy bit of a start there. So I think that one's definitely going to be highly contended. Defensive Player of the Year, as you mentioned, is going to be highly contended. I do think that Evan wins it this year, though. I just have a gut feeling, especially after the last game, talking him up, whether it was DG or Donovan or Evan Mobley, like himself. I think that they did a good job of really putting his case out there, and then they got him out on national television talking about it, getting him out of his shell, so to speak, which he has been talking a lot more now. Like he has been more aggressive in his pursuit for the award and talking his stuff, and rightfully so, because he's definitely earned it this year. And I think that having to put your own case ahead is simply because somebody else started talking, and that's really where it started. And that's, just kind of a politicking game in the league for these awards sometimes, and that one especially. And Defensive Player of the Year can be so hit or miss for me too, because a lot of the time it's like a traditional big man that protects the rim that usually goes and wins it. But I think the versatility required to defend in today's NBA really kind of gives you an edge over the rest of the competition, or should in the voters' eyes. And even guards should be eligible for this award. Dyson Daniels should be very much so considered.
For sure.
Lou Dort in Oklahoma City should be very much so considered for this.
Dude, Lou Dort flies under the radar all the time. Like that dude's so good defensively. He might be literally like the best defender in the NBA, but nobody really notices it. Nobody really talks about it. It's crazy. But I love Lou Dort's game. He's fantastic.
He's a rock. He's a literal rock. But yeah, it's not. This is why award season always ticks me off, because for a lot of these awards, there's no criteria, which is on purpose. The NBA wants you to discuss these things. They want the fans to go out and present their cases, or say, laughing my ass off, like there's no way this guy's going to win this award, or there's no way this, like they want the conversation. They want the drama that comes with it. This is what the NBA wants. And I don't like that it's tied to financial incentives. I think that makes it really tough too for media that have to vote on the award. That's always makes it a very awkward kind of situation, but you got to make do with what the best you have information wise. And, same thing's going to be asked about with MVP. Like, is it going to be Shea? Is it going to be Jokic? Is, like these guys always are going to be in contention for these awards because there's no set criteria. If there was set criteria, I think it'd be a lot easier, but that's never going to happen.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, listen, we don't know the results of these awards just yet, but Spence and I, before we wrap things up here today, are going to hand out some awards of our own when it comes to the Cleveland Cavaliers and, what we're looking at in terms of how they did this season, some memorable moments, all these different things. And the first one, Spence, is an obvious one. It relates to the awards you just talked about on an NBA level. The MVP of the Cleveland Cavaliers, in your eyes, Spence, is who?
Of the Cleveland Cavaliers, I've got to say, this sounds very kind of politicky on my end too, but even though his statistical stuff was not the best this year, it was Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell came out as a leader this year. He stepped to the side, allowed the growth of Darius Garland and Evan Mobley to blossom. he even helped Jared Allen elevate to a level to where he played 82 games and kept him going and in the pick and roll situations and having him play the role that he played. I think that Donovan stepping into that role made other guys really look at that and say, okay, I will sacrifice this level for this. And I think that Donovan, we know what he's capable of on the floor, which is why he had a completely different approach to the season when Kenny met him up on the West Coast to start the year before it even got started. They had a conversation about that, about getting the best out of the young guys. And at the time when Kenny Atkinson got hired, I remember you and I specifically having a conversation talking about Kenny was the hire because of Darius Garland and Evan Mobley. They believe in them as the franchise cornerstones. Donovan Mitchell pulled out greatness from those guys this year, and I hope it continues in the playoffs. But Donovan just consistently has the voice. He's even-keeled leader. He's also aggressive when he needs to be. He is very persuasive, and he's good with his messaging too. When someone isn't doing their job, he'll tell them. When he's not doing his job, he will take the criticism. He will take it and apply it going into the next play and throughout the rest of the game. He is not anyone afraid of criticism. He's not afraid to dish it out. And I feel like that deserves a lot of love from anyone that follows the Cavs, but also the NBA in general.
I think the leadership part of it can't be understated. Because the reason Donovan feels like the main person you would look at as the MVP of this team, obviously we know he's a great player, top 20 player in this league. He's fantastic. But, you mentioned the stats being down. Okay. But it's the fact that this team goes as he goes from both an on the court standpoint, but also just they listen to him as a leader, and his voice carries in that locker room and matters and sort of sends this team in the right direction. So I think you're spot on with this. I'll throw a little bit of a twist at you though, and I'll say Evan Mobley, simply because his evolution this year on the offensive end of the floor in particular, and him being able to do more and, sometimes bring the ball up, for God's sake. Like he was doing more this year on the offensive end than he's ever done before. He was asked to do a lot and still give it on both ends, and he delivered. I think in that respect, he is this MVP caliber player. He even said at some point he envisions him and Wemby are going to be like two of the top 5 players in the NBA. So he knows he's on that trajectory. I think it took a massive leap towards that. And frankly, he's been this team's playoff success. Yes, Donovan has to play well, but this team's playoff success feels like it hinges a lot on what Evan Mobley is able to do on this stage here coming up in the next couple weeks.
I think so too. And I think that Evan knows that, which is good because he's going to be the one that's aggressive. Kenny wants to bring that out of him too, which is really important to have him in this situation, because now the playoff planning has been going on for a while now. They have playoff stuff that they work on in practices when they have the opportunity to, which is few and far in between with the days and the NBA schedule, of course. But man, it was really something to see and hear from Kenny about how Evan has really blossomed offensively, like you said, as a playmaker, as someone who can attack the basket, but also use his array of moves to get to the spots and to take it in transition and to be the one to really be in attack mode. And that, I feel like, has only strengthened his case as being one of the more improved players himself too. I don't think he's going to win most improved for sure, but yeah, it's at the same time, you have to really look into a lot of the aspects of his games that he's improved, like the outside shooting, driving off of closeouts, finding cutters, being able to use him in dribble handoff situations with Max Strus and Sam Merrill, finding, JA inside and big to big ball as he's always done. But it's just been such an elevation, I think. I don't want to use evolution. You already used that. An evolution, we could say pun intended on that one.
Yeah.
But it's been an elevation of Evan Mobley that has taken this team to another level, and that's what we predicted. I don't think that we predicted that it would happen as soon as one season, but he's taken the leap. He has taken the leap, and I'm excited to see what that looks like in the playoffs. I'm very excited, and we don't have to wait too much longer because it's Sunday night.
Yeah, I agree. I like how he performs at this next stage is what he'll be sort of graded on this entire season, and how he's able to step up. And I'm just as excited as you to see that. I think I probably changed this up on you a little bit, Spin, and I apologize. I should have told you. So I initially had on there like most important newcomer, but I was like, that doesn't really make a lot of sense because there wasn't a lot of newcomers. And then I remember what we kind of done at the All-Star break. We had the most important role player and then like the unsung hero. So I have those two as the next two. I'll give you my answers here. Most important role player, I think, and I feel like you and I are going to be in simpatico on this one. I think it's going to be Ty Jerome. It kind of has to be. Just his ability to come in off the bench and provide a spark, play alongside. Like there was times where Kenny Atkinson was throwing like the 3-guard lineup at you with Darius, Ty, and Donovan all on the floor together. And it was something that teams kind of had to account for, a change up in terms of like going a little smaller there. He was just so deadly. Like everyone talked all year about they saw him at the beginning of the year doing this and they were like, okay, how can he really keep this up? And then he kept it up through like February and everyone was like, okay, I guess this is just who Ty Jerome is now. And so everyone's kind of accepted that he's just this tremendous player. And yeah, the spark that he provided off the bench was just it's invaluable, like something we can't really put a price on. But yeah, he's going to be massively important to this postseason as well. But I think the answer for most important role player is him. And then for unsung hero, I'm going with Max Strus. Like Max Strus is like the gritty guy who doesn't get praised enough. We talk about, like, everyone points out when he's having a rough patch in terms of his shooting. But Spence, like, how many times have we brought up on our post-game shows, right place, right time with Max Strus? He's always making the right play at the right place at the right time. It's remarkable, man. Like, I stay enamored with just his ability to continue to make plays no matter what. And it's fun to watch him just play every single night and seem to always make the right play for this Cavs team.
I agree. And I think with role player, I also am going to give that to Ty Jerome, even though that's kind of more of a bench role. Like you said, he's been in those 3-guard lineups. He's also someone that calms down the offense. He's someone that can organize and set up. And then, as we know, he doesn't miss floaters, like ever. No matter what angle he's going in, that thing's going up, and it's going through the net. It might go off the glass. It might be off of his left foot. It might be because of a slow step underneath the rim, but that floater is going in every single time. And then that leads to his incredible confidence to just pull up and shoot threes, which is very fun to watch when he's got it going on. As far as my unsung hero, I got to go to J.A. And I don't know how you can say unsung hero as one of the members of the Core 4, but for some reason, this guy does not get enough love for doing what he does on a daily basis, and that's getting rebounds, setting screens, and protecting the rim. And I think that goes unheralded, especially for someone like him who could be an all-star any single year. But he's gone out of his way to sacrifice, as we got to at the beginning of the episode, sacrificing for the betterment of the team because there are better options to score. There are better options to do a lot of different things offensively. And Jarrett's like, all right, I'll be the cleanup guy. I'll be the guy in the pocket to dunk the ball when you need me. I'll be the guy to set a screen for you so that you can create your own shot from there. Defensively, yeah, I'll be the anchor at the rim. I don't care if a guy tries to dunk on me. I'll try to alter it. I'll try to block it, which he's done on a number of occasions. He has just been such a professional this year, and honestly, since he's been a part of the organization. And he deserves a lot of credit for that. And I think that in the postseason, you're going to notice him coming up big because there aren't going to be back-to-backs anymore. He's going to be able to rest from time to time. And now there's no pressure on him for this point.
As long as he stays healthy, I agree with you. Like, he'll be massive. I think that's a good answer, sort of an outside-the-box answer, and that everyone, in classic fashion of the Unsung Hero award or a superlative we're handing out here, like, he is the guy that everyone would overlook because it would have been like, well, no one's giving it to J.A. He's part of the Core 4. But in that vein, he is kind of overlooked in that way, and so I think it's very fitting that you give it to him. Last two things. At the All-Star break, we had a clear answer to what the best game of the season was. I want to know if it's changed at all for you, because we said it was Cavs Thunder. That was I don't know if that was one of the most enjoyable basketball games I've ever watched. The only thing I could come up with that maybe rivaled it, Spence, was the Cavaliers against the Celtics, like one of the first games after the All-Star break, when they were down 25-3, and you got Jason Tatum doing like the get the F out of here thing, and then they come back and win the game. That was a pretty fun one that I think cemented, like, okay, this team is not going to back down from the Celtics, and we can't wait. It was the last time they played this year up until the playoffs, and so it was like one of these, like, okay, this sets the stage now for what could be a really epic playoff series that they meet.
I still want to give it to the Thunder and the Cavs game. I think that's still the best one of the year. I know Boston coming back on the road, winning against them was really fun. And I had a blast watching that. Had a blast watching it and breaking it down with you after too.
Yeah,
It was very, very fun game that might simulate what happens in the Eastern Conference Finals, depending on what happens. So yeah, that was a blast. I got a small one, man. Like I'm not gonna lie, that Knicks game the other night when guys were playing to the end and there was nothing on the line except for pride, that taught me something, man. And I made a video about it last week. I was like, Kenny left these guys in because they want to finish it. They want to finish that game. They came out lackadaisical. The Knicks were up by like 20 plus. It was just looking like ugly. And then the Cavs showed their pride in the second half. There was no reason. They had the number 1 seed locked up, but they just kept playing. And DG was a big part of it, right? And Evan was a big part of it. It was a lot of the guys that came up and were like, no, we need to start playing playoff type basketball, even if it means giving it our all at the Garden. And we want to make a statement. And I think they did that night, especially because New York had their players out there. They weren't sitting nobody. They went out and took a large lead, and the Cavs were just going through the motions, and then it completely flipped in the second half. Max Strus came up with some huge plays, a lot of threes, but that chase down block at the end with a minute left. This is a game, again, that did not matter for all intents and purposes.
Yeah.
And they went out and won it on the road. I think that deserves a lot of consideration for their game of the year as well, especially after all of the bad-mouthing from March because of what happened on the road in that West Coast trip. I think that deserves a lot of love.
That's a fun one. I like that answer. I think it did sort of set the stage potentially for the playoffs here. And anytime you can beat the Knicks, we know Cavs fans enjoy that. So the last one I threw on here, Spence, was just the moment of the season. I nominate the 15-game win streak as the moment of the season. I mean, that talk about a great way to start the season. Nobody saw it coming. First year with Kenny Atkinson, and for them to rattle off 15 in a row was just, that was something that I think everyone was part of this like wild ride. They all got everyone got swept up in it. Like, how long can they keep this going? I know they had a longer one later in the season, but for me, I think it has to be the 15-game win streak.
Donovan's game winner in Milwaukee, if we want to talk about plays.
Okay.
Like you talk about a stretch, that can be a moment. But in terms of plays, it'd be that Donovan game winner in Milwaukee. And then I'm also thinking to myself, that transition play that woke the Cavs up. And I don't remember. I think it was on the West Coast. It was actually during the bad West Coast road trip. But there was like 2 passes, and I think it was Strus to Garland or Garland to Strus, and then someone dunked it in transition. And I think it was against Utah, actually. That transition was one of the prettiest plays I think I watched all year long, and I had a blast watching that. I think that was a transition play that could be the moment of the Cavs season, even though like it's something that no one would probably think of because we just talked about the games. We talked about the Thunder and the Celtics and, the Knicks and stuff like that. You talked about the winning streak. Donovan's game winner and that transition play, I think, were my favorite of the year. And then stretch where Evan Mobley went off against Charlotte for the first time and knocked down 4 or 5 threes earlier in the year. I think that was also a very fun time to be a part of that.
Spence got really nitty-gritty basketball on us, and I love it. I love every second of it. Do you have any better answers for our superlatives we handed out today? MVP of the Cavs, most important role player, unsung hero, best game of the season, and the moment of the season. Let us know. You can hit us up on social media at Spin Davies for Spence, at Spence2_ for me. And you can always jump in the comment section at the Cleveland Cavaliers on SI YouTube channel, where we have all sorts of content like this. We'll have a lot more for you, too, this week. Practices start on Thursday ahead of the playoffs. We got the game on Sunday, and then plenty more to come. We'll have you covered throughout the playoffs, plus more episodes. We'll have another episode of the podcast, Courtside with the Cavs on SI here on Friday as well. So stay tuned for that. Please like, follow, subscribe, and review the podcast wherever it is that you get your podcast. Spence, it's been a fun time, man. I look forward to Friday's conversation. We have some more information about what the Cavs are doing in practice, how they're preparing, and we'll have maybe a better sense of what the opponent for the Cavs is going to look like starting in the first round of the playoffs as well.
Down to 3.
That's right. Down to 3, and we'll be down to 2 after tonight. Appreciate you guys stopping by, and keep on following along with all things Cleveland Cavaliers, the Cleveland Cavaliers on SI.